Yeah, welcome to BBC Radio 1 Breakfast Show with me, Greg James. And I'm going to be inviting, some fantastic guests on today's show like you, studying this lesson at home. Later, we're going to be hearing about something about their life that is fairly kind of trivial. And a big pause. We're going to be talking to a big generic star. At some point, somebody's going to come on. We're going to be frequently interrupted by the news and other useful information for your morning, gradually playing more and more music as the teenagers all get to school. And we're going to be playing this high energy music in the background just to get your morning started really well. We're probably going to get a really good guest on and completely waste their time and just talk about other random stuff instead of any reason for why they're actually popular or famous in the first place. And we'll probably stick something in as well about your relationship because that probably matters to you listening to this show. That's quite enough of that silliness here. Anyway, we're going to focus today on Radio 1's place within the Great British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. And Radio 1 has been around a long time, so is the BBC. I bet you're all wanting to know how much money they give to Radio 1 specifically. We'll never fear because you're about to find out on the very next slide. Here we go. Now, on the left-hand side of your screen, left, right, it's like the other way around. Anyway, fine. You will see that the BBC have a total budget at the moment of £653 million. That's quite a lot on radio. It would be worth you jotting down some notes from this diagram here. Now you can see that of that, the largest split goes to local radio and obviously funds lots and lots of different radio stations, including BBC Radio Newcastle around here. After that, the next biggest chunk goes to Radio 4, which is an intellectual and news programming, where you'll have play of the day, panel shows, and comedies, but also very serious political programs throughout the day. Radio 1 down there don't actually have a particularly large slice of the pie here. And partly that's because of Greg James, being their main star, who they keep having every single day. So you're talking his wages, and then a lot of the rest of the programme is created by the consumers themselves, by the listeners themselves. You don't have to have hugely extravagant setups all the time, okay? That said, though, 54 million is quite a lot of money still. And it does upset a lot of people when they are paying their hard-earned cash for the BBC to see it spent on celebrities frittering away their time and money playing games. We'll talk more about that very soon, but jot down some important things from that box there. Pause me and jot them down so I didn't just have to stand here with my finger like in the air. Okay, on the other side of this slide you can see that the TV revenues absolutely dwarf the tiny little radio revenues that we have. The 2.4 billion television budget is huge. Over half of that goes into their flagship channel, BBC One, of course. And you can see the split for the other more minor channels along there. But yeah, again, BBC Two getting 500, half a billion, I should say. So a huge amount of money there as well. So radio takes a smaller slice of the pie of the TV license fee, the license fee, as you will, of the BBC than other stations, but is still big and controversial in itself. Take a look at this news article here. This is from just a couple of years ago, and summarises the position in the media about the licence fee and the future of the BBC and that kind of thing here as well. So, apparently Boris Johnson delighted workers yesterday by revealing he may axe the TV licence fee and scrap its non-payment as a criminal offence. Playing to your fans there, Boris. Anyway, you can see a couple of reasons for this bias, perhaps, as we go through. So, probably a note to make here is that the Conservative position, Boris Johnson's party position, is that the TV licence fee is not a requirement. It's not something they're going to want to protect in quite the same way. Okay? I have 3 questions for you here. I'd like you to jot them down on your piece of paper, please. Write your answers down. Now, for number 1, you'll be using some of the skills from the other side of the course, as in the news bit there as well. Pause me now, and give yourself maybe 5 minutes to write your answers to these. Okay, so you probably came up with ideas a little bit like this, that the Sun is a fairly strong Conservative supporting newspaper. At the moment, it has flip-flopped over the years, generally kind of riding whichever's more popular there. But it is generally a right-wing newspaper that at the moment is loving private business, not liking public ownership, things like that as well. We'll talk more about that on the next slide. The licence fee is never going to be universally popular with everybody because it's something you just have to pay, and it's a charge. However, the article just completely ignores all the good stuff about the BBC. That it is a quality guarantee, that there is certainly also an attempt at being unbiased, although those attempts are controversial in themselves. The BBC is a really traditional, almost historic institution in our country, and it has had to adapt frequently to new changes in technology, and sometimes, it's fair to say, has struggled to keep up. In other ways, it's been very good. Okay, so hopefully this is giving you a bit of an impression of where Radio 1 lies within the BBC and where the BBC lies within the political ideas in England at the moment. There's a fierce debate raging about the BBC. Now, when we talked about technology changing, it's important to note that not every demographic engages with media in the same way, okay? When I was your age, when I was young, many years ago, I'd put on the radio and I would listen to it. I would listen to it at the time it was being broadcast, and we call that linear radio listening or linear TV watching, just in the same way as a linear refers to a straight line, okay? But that linear listening isn't really the kind of thing that happens anymore. Now, to make notes on this, there's some space in the tables that Miss Gilliam worked on with you last time, or you can just jot it down on a bit of paper for now. Radio 1 was absolutely massive in the 80s and 90s. It was huge. I went to the Radio 1 Roadshow in Portsmouth and watched East 17, who you'll probably know from their popular Christmas song Stay Another Day, live in concert. It was absolutely wonderful, and there were thousands and thousands of people there. It was a really, really big thing. These days, the audience is slightly more fragmented, slightly more diverse, and of course, it has migrated online. Very few people tuning in and listening to the programme all the way through these days. What do you expect? What's important to you in your lives? The youth of today, you like you, don't you? That's what the media would think anyway, that everybody is all completely obsessed by themselves. Everything has to be personalised and completely made appropriate for you, your specific importance in life. Yes, you want control of everything. I don't have to wait for my music. I want it now, on demand, etc. And the BBC has had to adapt to that and move with that as well. Okay. Now, another problem, moving to bullet point 3 here on the slide, is that pop music, popular music, sometimes even used as an insult in itself, has a lower cultural status than, say, classical music or original dramas. And that makes it a little bit harder for the BBC to justify. You remember the Rethium values that Miss Gillian and Mr. OP have been talking about on this bit of the course already. They have to educate as well as entertain. And it's a little bit harder to claim that you're doing that when you're Radio 1 larking around with whatever it is that Taylor Swift has tweeted that day, okay? So you have to work hard to be a little bit more relevant, or at least pretend that they are. There are a few good things in its favour though. Live music is seen as more authentic, and the Radio 1 Live Lounge and the marketing itself for Radio 1 as the home of live music, it does help them to try to tick those boxes and crucially not lose any funding. A few notes if you want. Pause me. I'll just be here. You're going to eat a Christmas chocolate while you make some notes. Got some left over. Okay, so my eating of a tangy orange cream should have been exactly the amount of time you needed to make notes on that section here. Now, I mentioned before that there was a debate going on about the BBC. There are actively people wanting to have the licence fee removed at the moment. We're going to explore for a moment some of the arguments for and against, alright? Now, when Parliament were having a debate about this, about a year and a half ago, the Culture Secretary, John Whittingdale, said, "At its best, the BBC sets international standards of quality, even in the multimedia age, and its most popular programmes continue to draw the audience to the shared experiences happened with the Olympics and the drama Sherlock." Okay. Now this is a really important point, that when you get something big and national going on, people turn to the BBC. And the 2012 London Olympic coverage from the BBC was absolutely fantastic. It was so good, in fact, that I've been banned from complaining about the BBC in my own house for 10 years. So I have to wait until 2022 until that ban expires, because the Olympic coverage was so good and I kept going on about it back then. Anyway, the big dramas that are out, that everybody watches and loves. Think about the BBC Christmas special this year, for example, was a big thing for people to discuss, both online and offline. Think about also the coronavirus situation that we found ourselves in here. When people are watching the press conferences for Boris Johnson, when they're looking at the coverage of Parliament and things like that, it's the BBC they turn to. And not only in this country, but internationally as well. People tune into our BBC because it is trusted in those strange times. If there was some kind of war or nuclear disaster or something crazy like that, it's the BBC that people would tune into. And it's not only the politicians who've argued about this as well. British actors who perhaps started on the BBC, owe them a lot, love it. They wrote to David Cameron back when he was Prime Minister to say, you know, you've got to protect the BBC. It's an important part of national life. A diminished BBC would mean a diminished Britain. It is truly one of those brands that we export all across the world, with BBC Worldwide as well, for radio as well as for TV. So it is to some extent a national treasure that many people feel need to be protected. Me amongst them. Not that that's relevant. Okay. When I said before that not everybody feels the same, this graph will hopefully demonstrate that. I don't know if my little video recording thing is in the way. I'm moving myself out of the way. Is that how it looks on your screen as well? I'm going to put myself up here. I'm higher up now. Anyway, so here we have a demographic breakdown, demographic portion of audience, okay, for the Radio 1 Breakfast Show. Now, I would like you to turn this graph into a written summary, transform it into another format so that you've understood. I'm going to talk you through it slightly, and then you can think about whether or not we should be keeping the license fee at this stage of history, 2021. Okay, right then. So have a look at the left-hand side. You can see on the vertical axis we have the proportion of listening time that is spent either live on radio, streamed, personal, etc., etc. All adults there you can see. That is the average 71% listening live radio. But look at the demographic that is Greg James's audience for The Breakfast Show, and you can see that a mere 29% of people are listening live if they're in that crucial 16 to 24 demographic that Radio 1 totally focuses on, as you heard in your lessons before. And as you go up the graph, you can see that proportion of live radio continuing. However, when these people grow older and move along, they're not going to suddenly listen to more live music. It's more like that trend is dying out and moving along there. And as older year groups get used to more technology, I can imagine the top sections of people streaming their music, listening to it on demand, etc., YouTube, Spotify, etc., that will be gaining more as well. So this is a bit of a warning in some ways about where live radio is going, and the BBC have had to adapt to that. They've adapted that by adding lots of online content onto the website, by having video blogs, by having extra video content for Greg James's show as they go through, as well as all the interactivity that they do with quizzes, texting in and stuff like that as well. Okay, going to give you a couple of minutes now to really understand that, transform that, and make some notes on it, please. You can pause me now. There's a pause like an animal's pause. Okay, unpause me now, and we'll have a look at the political context. I'm going to move again. Folks, I'm going up in the title box. Nice. The political contexts for England, basically. And a lot of you will know this from your Inspector Calls work and just generally from politics as well. I'm not meaning to patronise you at all. But I want you to think about the political perspective on the BBC here. So you've got the left wing of politics, crudely represented by the Labour Party here and their current leader Keir Starmer. I've put his Twitter links on there as well. You can have a look at his Twitter feed and have a look at his position on public broadcasting over the last few months if you want to do some independent work and scan down that at some point. And then on the right wing, of course, you've got Boris Johnson and his Conservative Party with their majority in Parliament at the moment. Now, how do their political viewpoints translate to what they think about Radio 1? Well, the left wing traditionally is the public service party. Okay, higher taxes generally to provide more of a service for people. Okay, where the government help out with a lot of things, from the transport network, hospitals and the NHS, for example, schools, electricity, water. All those things are in state ownership. Okay. They are public ownership. You don't have to directly pay money as you come into school every day. You pay taxes, and those taxes are used for the education service. That means that everybody gets access to all of them. But you might disagree with how some of that money is spent, etc., etc. On the other side then, the Conservative Party, generally, traditionally lower taxes. I'm not going to say low, lower taxes, with less funding of public services historically. They are more interested in moving things out of public shared state ownership and putting them into private hands. Okay, even today, I don't know when you're watching this, but even today on Twitter, there's been a big fuss about the free school meal service during lockdown, and lots of pictures going around of how much food people need to get by on if they're in receipt of free school meals. And one of the major criticisms of that has come from the fact that the Conservatives have given the contract for making these like food hamper parcel things to a private company who have obviously not spent the full amount of money they've received on doing it. So overheads must be very high. A lot of people saying, well, this represents that the right-wing parties don't care about individuals, they care about profit and things like that too much. But obviously there's, there's pros and cons of both sides, yada, 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 etc., etc. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that under a Conservative government then, we would be more likely to not have the BBC anymore. And that is indeed something that people are pressing for. Now, I think the first lockdown last year, the BBC did themselves loads of favours by creating lots of good educational content. And by working so closely with the government to be able to broadcast and get across their messages for the coronavirus briefings. So I think the BBC have bought themselves quite a lot of time in this debate now. But make no mistake, the BBC are living at a dangerous time politically for them to feel comfortable and secure in continuing to get their licence fee payment and make that enshrined in law. Okay. Now, you can think of, people call it a tax. It's broadly a tax, really. You have to pay for it. It's not totally in line with what the Tory party would want. Okay, they would generally want people to be able to pay for things themselves, rather than forcing these kind of payments upon people. That's odd, because lots of people accuse the BBC of being biased towards the Conservative Party. And there's a link that you can follow there on the lesson as well. The lesson's on the SharePoint, remember, so you can access them via there. But basically, a lot of people complaining that the BBC is biased towards the Conservative Party. Similarly, lots of people complaining it is biased in the other direction as well. People get very upset about this. Why? Have a think. Yes, because it's their money that's being spent. Yeah? You don't necessarily feel the need to argue with ITV or Channel 4 if they put something on that offends you. You turn it over. It's funded by advertising. It's funded completely different from the BBC. You just turn it off. You don't need to worry about it. But when it's your money that they're spending, people obviously get very emotional about it. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do for this activity here is to reduce this information down to be just 3 very short bullet points. I'm going to talk you through it. Because, I've weirdly slipped through that tape. I'm going to move my thing there. Right, okay, great, super. It's all new. Because it's publicly funded, Radio 1 has to justify existence and prove that it's worth the money, providing distinctive and worthwhile content. Okay, I'd like to reduce that sentence down, please. Funding an entertainment show is difficult. It gets a political issue because not everybody finds the same things entertaining. And at tricky times for the economy like now, the arts and entertainment are often the first victim of funding cuts because they are not so essential. When the BBC, who are now forced to reveal the salaries paid to their presenters, it puts quite a lot of pressure on the station, especially if those salaries aren't equal or can leave themselves open to accusations of unbalanced pay based on gender, discriminatory pay, which has been in the news quite a bit lately for the BBC. And there have been calls from people to privatise Radio 1. Okay, so to separate, to chop it off as part of the BBC and make it into a commercial station as well, to no longer fund it and save that £54 million, spend it on something else instead. I would like you to reduce those sentences down, please. You could pause me, and do that. Okay, you can unpause me. You're hopefully starting to think about where you stand on this, because media is not just about what you know, it's about having some opinions about what you know. It's not about facts and figures, it's about you constructing an argument. A lot of sixth form studies like that, let's be honest. Yep. Do you think it should be privatised? Do you think it should remain as part of the BBC? I wonder. Well, let's explore a little bit more the calls to separate and privatise, so become private, no longer part of the BBC, no longer part of the state, if you will, to see if this helps you with your decision. So, A lot of people are arguing that Radio 1 and 2's public service role is very minimal, okay? It is thought that they would attract a price of £500 million if it was sold off to the private sector, okay? The BBC is able to cross-promote itself by using the same celebrities and presenters on the radio that it uses on TV, and cross-subsidise. And what it means there is saving money by doing lots of different things. Until, I think last week, Graham Norton presented a show on Radio 2 every Saturday morning, as well as his chat shows on BBC One and other bits and bobs that he's done on BBC Two as well. So he's got one salary, and they can split him across different things there as well. Okay? Lots of controversy about this. Does it represent value for money or not? You can decide. Okay, does it deserve the funding that it gets? Well, Richard Huntingford, who is the boss of Chrysalis, that runs lots of commercial radio stations like Metro Radio, for example, and all the different kind of synchronized radio stations that make up things like Pure and Kiss, and all those different radio stations across the country, as you would expect, has a little bit of a dig at the BBC. He doesn't like it because he is the competition, and they are getting all this money for free, basically, and he's not. He says, I personally see very little public service benefit in the Greg James breakfast show on Radio 1 or Steve Wright in the afternoon on Radio 2. He speaks like that because he's very dismissive of the BBC, of course. If they don't provide a public service, then why should their licence be fee-funded? Fee-funded! It sounded like I was being read there, but it wasn't. But the BBC have responded to this and said, you know what, I know lots of people are saying, I get that, I do, but no. What we're doing instead is we're improving, right? The government hasn't recommended closing any services. Instead, we're going to make things more rigorous, make sure we know who's paying what. We're going to have more transparency to people about how their hard-earned money is being paid. Okay? Makes sense? And he said, look, Radio 1 and 2, they offer innovative, so new, constantly evolving and distinctive content that the market alone couldn't provide. So you, Richard, up there with your big quote about how you should be getting paid for it, you can't actually do what we can do as a BBC. We are unique. Right, what do you think then? Where do you stand on this? That's enough of me waffling on. Pause this and spend the next 5 minutes thinking about where you stand on the issue of the BBC licence fee. Alright folks, that's it for today. Well done. And I hope that you've enjoyed this little exploration into the licence fee and the political background of it. Next lesson, we're going to take a close study of a Greg James show and go really delving in detail for it. Stick your info on your blog, send that link to your teachers. Take care. See you again next time.